Hello everyone, my name's Phil Calvert and a very warm welcome to the Financial Advisor Mastermind and Challenge. Throughout this week, advisors, leading experts and consultants to the financial planning profession are sharing amazing insights into just what makes a world-class financial advice business. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking with someone who is very much part of the new disruptive economy. For 4 years, Brinkley Mbe was Managing Director of Metro Bank and has since moved on to build a portfolio career of non-executive directorships. He's an international speaker, executive coach and consultant in business and sport. Very warm welcome to you, Chris. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Phil. Thanks for asking. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here.
It's great to see you. And where are you today?
Manchester this morning, and then travelling up to London for some work this afternoon, this evening, and all day tomorrow.
Fantastic. Well, we'll just give a little bit more background just to put more icing on the cake. For the benefit of people watching, Chris was awarded Sales and Marketing Director of the Year for 3 consecutive years by the British Excellence in Sales and Marketing Awards. He was awarded Most Outstanding Employer at the National Business Awards. He was awarded Britain's Best Boss by the Working Families Association, and he was awarded Sales Leader of the Year at the National Sales Awards. That says something about you like entering awards, I guess.
I like sales, and I like leading people. I think the awards were a byproduct of some of the great work that the team had achieved, and we worked well as a team. We had a very clear vision about not just caring for our customers, but showing that we cared for our customers. Not just saying that we cared for our colleagues, but actually showing that we cared for our colleagues. On top of that, we showed we cared for our business, our community, and actually we showed that we cared for ourselves. I always use the word show, Phil, because a lot of people tell me they care, but then I watch them behave, and actually the behaviours and the language are often very, very different. And I think congruency and integrity and authenticity is a key part of sort of certainly in the financial services world, probably in the wider world as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So I want to get straight into the meat here because of your financial services background.
Yeah.
Banks traditionally have not been everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah.
People quite often stay with the same bank for years. My mother is in her 80s and she's banked with NatWest since the 1950s and never really felt any desire or need to change. And then along comes this upstart called Metro Bank, and you were involved with that right from the very start.
Yeah.
What was it you were trying to achieve as an organisation?
Well, I think banks have done full circle. I think banks were regarded as professional when your mum would have opened her account, and then it would have been possibly sort of not even NatWest. NatWest wasn't formed until the late 60s as a merger of 3 other banks.
Yeah.
And I joined a bank because I genuinely thought I was joining a profession where the bank manager would walk down the high street and would be highly regarded. The same bank manager would, do loans of £1 to loans of £500,000. They were general practitioners. And that's what inspired me to join NatWest in 1982, because I wanted to be part of a professional team. Sadly, I think banks lost sight of why they existed and actually forgot all about the customer. It then became about profit. It then became obsessive about sales. And whilst that happened, we lost some of the good stuff as well. I remember working for NatWest when we talked about having financial advisors, and we led financial advisor teams, through tied agents, through Legal and General, right through to the creation of NatWest Life. And I know the people I worked with then gave great advice. And I was one of the beneficiaries that when my wife told me she was pregnant with our first child, I was given some great advice that said, you'll get something called family allowance. It was £18 a month, put £9 in a 10-year bond and £9 in a 17-year bond. I went, why? He went, because when you go to primary school, they'll go on an expensive school trip, and when they get to the age of 17, they'll want a car. And funnily enough, that's exactly what happened. But that advice was just great advice. So, and then, as I say, banks just seemed to lose why they existed. And Vernon Hill founded Metro Bank based on a model he'd successfully applied in America with Commerce Bank. And Vernon came over to the UK, hearing those stories of inertia, people not moving bank accounts despite the most horrendous service proposition. And Vernon set about to change that, and it was the first high street bank to open on the high street in over 100 years. And we predicated ourselves on what does the customer really want from a bank? And we were given lots of consultancy advice that said customers are only bothered about interest rates. Well, the survey that we did via YouGov suggested that only 7% cared about service rates, but over 50% cared about convenience. So as a result of that, we started to really reflect on the traditional service banks' offerings. And when you really get into them, Phil, it's bizarre. You know, traditional banks open the doors when most people go into work.
Yeah.
They then shut the doors before people leave work.
Yes.
And you sit there and go, what sort of model is that? So Metro Bank set about opening 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, Monday to Friday, 8 till 6 on a Saturday, 11 till 5 on a Sunday. And it was part fun, but a real part service proposition. We chose to open on bank holidays. That really upset the competition.
Yeah.
And then you started to think around, you know, we've got customer toilets, we've got baby changing facilities, we embrace dogs, we love dogs walking in our stores, we've got 2 dog bowls at the entrance of every store, we've got dog biscuits on the counter, we've got magic money machines that are interactive with people that just want to throw a load of coin in so they're not wasting time having to count it at home, particularly those people who maybe collect it for charity. And we just really started to look at it from what we call the outside in, which is, what does our customer want? Let's make sure we give them what they want. Whereas I think the traditional banks went through a period of inside out, where it was inside the organisation deciding what was going to happen outside to the customers. And you know, we wanted to revolutionise the banking industry.
Yeah. Not
just we wanted to demonstrate how good Metro Bank will be and now are in terms of being recognised by the Competition and Markets Authority as the leading service provider. But we wanted the other banks to wake up and give their customers a better service, because we sort of knew that not everybody moves bank accounts. Typically, if you open one at school or university, historically suggests that you'll stay there. We just wanted to change that.
It is. It's very much got the feeling that the main banks would. This is the service that we give, and you know, you either play along with us. I've heard you talk about pens as well at Metro Bank.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you're sort of almost going to the bizarre now. You know, and I encourage, you know, when you've seen me speak and others have seen me speak, I encourage customers of the traditional banks to go in and ask if they can use the toilet. Yeah. Well, funnily enough, the answer is no, because you're a security risk. You know, and we sit there and just put customer toilets in. But pens is fascinating. You know, after the meaning of life, I suppose the question I do ask myself more than anything else is, why do traditional banks chain pens down? And it's bizarre, because they're not even branded. So you just sit there and go, well, why would a bank chain a pen down? Well, I can only think of one reason, that the banks think their customers are thieves, and they're going to steal the pen. Quite frankly, the pen's not worth stealing. And it just sends the wrong message for me. The traditional banks spend hundreds of £1 million on TV adverts with some cheesy sayings, trying to attract customers in, and say to the customer, trust me with your money, but I'm not going to trust you with my black pen. Yeah. Bizarre. So at Metro Bank, we give millions of pens away every year, fully branded. We walk down local retailers, we'll give them boxes of pens. It gives us a great opportunity to have a chat, build relationships, and then we go down the high street every few weeks, refilling the pen boxes with our Metro Bank pens. It's great advertising. Other banks chain them down. Bizarre. Yeah.
Well, both my kids have opened accounts at Metro, and you know, they always get a nice warm welcome when they go in there, which is fantastic. So what does this tell us about the high street and also the future of banking? Because in some respects, you're doing the exact opposite of what's going on out there.
Yeah, so I still think people like relationships. And there's a great quote from Mark McCormack, who founded the sports agency IMG. And basically he said, when all things are equal, people will do business with people they like. Which is a pretty obvious statement. It's the second part of the statement that I really like. He then went on to say, when things are unequal, people will still do business with people they like. And I have things done in my life that I pay for a service that I know is not the cheapest, but I enjoy the relationship. It's based on trust and reliability. And as a result of that, I'm prepared to pay a premium.
Yeah.
So I buy on value, not on price. And therefore, I still think the high street has a place and a part to play. And it's just getting the balance right. So I think it is a blend between transactions, which can be done online, but in terms of service, trust, looking somebody in the eye and asking them, being able to explain their situation. And the thing I love about financial advisors and my experience of them is they sit down and they really explore through great questioning, great listening, what the customer truly, truly wants. Because sometimes what the customer thinks they want might not actually be what they need, because they might be limited in the information, and actually it might be a short-term thing that they're thinking, when great advice might actually to be explore all the other options available, which is what's the outcome you want. So I think great high street outlets do that really well, whether that's retail or banking. The challenge I've got, I think, with some of the other banks is you can go into a traditional bank and play spot the person. They don't exist. Whereas Metrobank's proud to have a meet-a-greeter where we explore early on what customers are looking for. We have customer advisors that are visible. We have business cards with the store manager's name on them. You wouldn't be able to find a store manager because it's all in other banks, because it's all banks of technology. But we're channel agnostic. We want to provide it all and let the customer choose. Yeah. And I think that's where we have a differential, is the customer gets to choose how they interact with us. I mean, look at it this way, Phil. How many letters do you think a chief exec of a bank or a utility firm has ever received from a customer of their business, whether it's phones, electric or banks, that says, I'm really fed up with speaking to human beings on the phone. Can you please install immediately an automated voice response system that will keep me waiting on average for 14 minutes, ask me multiple questions at multiple entry points, and quite frankly, all I want to do is speak to a human being. You see, those banks and utilities say that we put the customer at the heart of everything we do. Well, no, you don't. Because quite frankly, if you did, you wouldn't have AVR. Or you'd only have AVR if the customer wanted AVR. That's the difference. And that's, for me, why I think great organisations will not only exist, but flourish in the high street. And the bit about the other banks closing, you know, I'll support them a little bit rather than just spend time having a dig, because, you know, the footprint for most traditional banks just was too big. It's when everybody used the service of the bank to do everything. Technology has changed that. It really has. So I think there's a fair argument to close some of the branches or stores to get a footprint that's a realistic size for the way people do transactions. What some of them might like to think about, though, is those community responsibilities. You know, and there are banks out there with mobile banks that will be a bit like a mobile library. It will be a Tuesday in this place, a Wednesday in that place, and a Thursday. I think that's fair and reasonable response, rather than having a building with all its costs associated. Yeah. Because people have to remember that for a basic current account in the United Kingdom, if you keep 1 penny in that account, you get all those services for free. You get your card, you get your checkbook, you get your online capability, you get the telephone system, all of that's for free. Somebody has to pay for that. Whereas in most of other countries, you pay for your check account. So, you know, I can see the business model and why other banks are doing it. I just think they might have gone too far with technology in some places.
Yeah. The technology of the challenger bank is an interesting one, in that, you know, we can go online, we can go to Monzo and some of these ones, and, you know, we can get an account literally within seconds. Yeah. But what I was fascinated about Metro was that you can get an account and your card there and then in the branch, which surely, was that a first?
Yeah, it was a store. Yeah, you know, some banks still to this day can't get you your card if it breaks with you to you in 3 to 5 working days. Yeah, it was a first, and we, you know, there's a smart operating model against it as well. You know, what do you think our postage costs are? Well, not a lot, because we open the account in store. So sometimes it's about how would you reallocate the money you have to deliver the service that customers want. And the great thing about printing cards in store is you get to choose your PIN number that suits you.
Yeah.
Whereas typically what would happen in a bank is, number one, I don't think they could open the account on the spot. I think they book you an appointment. You don't need an appointment with Metrobank. You know, most of our accounts are open within 15 minutes, and that's the account all open, the card chipped and pinned with your PIN number. So typically the bank will open you an account, send you your card in one envelope, and then send you your PIN number in another envelope. Well, that's twice the cost. And worse still for the customer, that PIN that the bank sends you, the traditional bank, isn't memorable. So they then make you go to an ATM, put in the original PIN that they've sent you to choose a PIN that you want. Well, you know, in terms of Six Sigma, lean, you know, or process mapping, that's a pretty clunky process. So we were delighted to be able to secure the software that enables us to print cards in store. And if a customer, for whatever reason, their card's not working today, they can walk past any Metrobank store, walk in, and within 15 minutes, whilst enjoying a nice cup of tea or coffee, have the card reprinted. Yeah. Even if you're a premium customer of other banks with hundreds of millions in your account, I'm not sure you could get that service.
No. I think also at a time where there are all sorts of questions about the high street and stores closing and high rents, more than ever before, that sense of community is needed. And in some respects, I find it ironic that a financial services organisation should be, in many ways, spearheading rebuilding of community.
Yeah, we are a community bank. You know, that's why we talk about our love of dogs. You know, I see lots of people walking with dogs. When you look at the entrance to a Metrobank store, there aren't any steps. Therefore, in terms of accessibility, that was a really key point. You know, I see lots of people, either mothers, fathers or carers, with young children in buggies. So it's great that they can come in. That's why we created the baby change facility in our stores, because our stores are immaculate. And we wanted people to feel that they could just walk in. The magic money machines are available for non-personal customers. If they're working for a charity and they just want to drop the money in, that's great. We hope by being part of that community, being very visible, that people will choose to do business with us. And it goes beyond the store, Phil, because, you know, we go out to local schools and do our Metro Money Zone, which is financial literacy. We don't sponsor the Premier League or the rugby union. We actually choose to work with local communities and local causes and support those events locally, because we're a community bank. So whilst it might say Metro above the door, Chiswick is very different from Boreham Wood, which is different from Milton Keynes, because, you know, we recognise and embrace that community.
Yeah. There's been all sorts of talk about disruption and how technology will impact financial services. It's a topic that comes up almost every day in our forums for financial advisors. How do you see the world of financial advice changing, if at all?
I think we've seen it change several times. You know, we've had banks where we had financial advisors, then all the banks got rid of financial advisors. Then, you know, some banks are starting that again. Yeah. But where the transaction is simple and without the need for lots of advice, I can see why technology could add real value. But I'm still a great believer that no matter what the algorithm, it can only work on what you input. What I think is great about people on the high street, again, whether that's financial advisors, banks or retailers, is people who serve me being curious, showing a real interest in me as a human, asking me what I'm really thinking. And it's those questions that if I was sat in front of a screen answering question number 7, I might not think of. And I've led mortgage teams, and we always said, look, let's not talk about the mortgage, because it's the one thing, the minute you get one, you want to get rid of. Let's talk about somebody's home. Let's talk about why they're going there, what they're trying to achieve. And I think you might really then spill out into almost somebody, whilst buying the house, having a life plan behind that purchase.
Yeah.
What great financial advisors do is can really start to signpost people to say, well, if you think that, maybe you want to consider that. If you want to think about that, then why don't you give me a ring in a year? I'll give you a ring. I'll do a service call. We'll chat about that. And I use my own example. I moved into my house to ensure that my 2 children went through their teenage years in that house. And therefore, I knew when I was buying it, I'd need to invest in it and spend some money doing it up. All of that stuff, just having great conversations. And then somebody would be talking to me about, well, when they finished secondary school, what would you do? Would you be thinking about university? Have you started planning for that yet? Quite frankly, I don't think a screening algorithm could have drawn those thoughts out that a great financial advisor did for me and my wife. Talked about all aspects of my future career, where I was going, when I was stepping down full time, and gave me some great advice that enabled me to make and achieve my financial goals and also my personal and professional goals.
Yeah.
I'm not sure technology can do that.
No. Now, Chris, you do a lot of work in the world of sport. Just to give sort of a backstory as to how you got involved with what you do. I mean, you're a non-exec director of the Rugby Football League, non-exec director of Rugby League World Cup, and a bunch of others as well. Manchester United, one of your clients, Sport England, Professional Footballers Association. Just tell us how you got involved with these organisations.
So first and foremost, sport is a real passion of mine. Has been since childhood. And it's any sport. If it was tiddlywinks and 2 people were playing it, I'd probably want to get involved. And I think what sport gave me, Phil, is whilst I've held some senior roles, I wasn't particularly academic. I didn't go to university. But what sport gave me was some real life skills, communication, teamwork, preparation, how to win properly, how to lose properly, and had some really good sports teachers along the way. And I got my football coaching badges quite early on, and I started to apply the principles of coaching in the workplace when typically it wasn't a thing. And as a result of that, the teams that I led and was part of, we achieved success, and ultimately I put my success down to a lot of the sporting principles. So when I got a senior executive role at NatWest, I said to my wife, I want to put something back, but also I have a goal, a 10-year goal, that by the time I'm 50, I don't want to work full-time for anyone. I don't want to be a respected sports administrator. To which her answer was, you're a banker. I think that's what she said anyway. And I said, look, I don't mind going away and doing my apprenticeship. So I was scouring roles, and there was a chairman role for a sports charity. And actually, I thought that really, really is where I think I'd like to go. And there was a real professional benefit for me as well, in that when you work in the charitable sector or the sports charity, the trustees were local authorities, I realised that their decision-making process was often very different to mine as an exec in the private sector. So I got amazing learnings from that by working to how to communicate differently and influence differently, understanding different levels of risk, because public sector, rightly so, worry about the fact that it's a public person, therefore they will take longer sometimes and do more exploratory, whereas often in the private sector you intuitively know it's the right thing to do. Just shoot and go for it, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you've lost a few quid. So as a result of getting the chair of that sports charity, I actually got to meet and learn from lots of other people in sport. And as a result of that, I started using some of my business principles to help sporting organisations be better at who they are and what they do. So I was learning, they were benefiting from some of the balanced business scorecard type approach of people, customers, financials, operations and risk, and almost systematise it, which is what I was used to in a bank. You know, the fact that we had regulators talk about risk and audit committees, really to manage some of the issues. And as a result of that, when I chose to step down full-time from Metrobank, I had several offers to work in sport. So I do a bit in sport and still do a bit in business. As you said earlier, I do a few keynotes. I'm an exec coach, and I work with an athlete transition company that helps athletes transition from their world into our world.
Yeah.
Because their world typically isn't going to keep them financially secure for the next 60 years of their life. And often when you've worked in sport, you live in a bit of a bubble.
Yeah.
So therefore, you know, I wake up every day with a different diary, with a different set of clients, and I'm very grateful for the investment I put in myself in supporting, you know, other organisations, because it's borne the fruit now.
People who've been successful in high performance sport, when they do come into the world of work, for want of a better expression, yes, some of them go out speaking, but they bring a skill set which is invaluable to businesses. And I know quite a few top flight rugby players have become IFAs, and they brought all sorts of skills with them.
Yeah, well, I know one organisation, you know, one of the leading IFAs in the country, whose academy is actually actively sourcing professional sports people, because they've got amazing discipline. You ask a professional athlete when they were late for training. Never late for training. You know, you ask them to talk to you about preparing for a big game, both team strategy and individual strategy. They'll talk you through the plan. Athletes have the most amazing qualities, and I use the phrase, sometimes it's about translation, not transition. So I meet sports people who say, Chris, I wouldn't know where to start with a strategic plan. So I'd sit there and say, so you've just been drawn against that team in the cup, what's your plan? And they go, well, they're weak on the wing, they're weak down the middle, they'll do that, we'll do the high ball. And I go, you've got a strategic plan, trust me. Yeah. And often it's the language that they've not been heard before, not been exposed to, that we're able to translate. The one thing they typically haven't got is knowledge. That's easy. It's the personal qualities and the teamwork and the ability to learn. You know, most elite sports people are teachable because they've been used to being coached, you know, every day of their life. As a result of that coaching, it's made them better. Therefore, they embrace coaching and they embrace feedback, whether that feedback is positive reinforcement or whether it's feedback that says, I'd prefer if you didn't do that again.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes in the traditional workforce, people actually aren't as welcoming of feedback. They take it personally and actually don't see it as part of the learning journey. So I get lots of excitement in working with athletes and watch their journey from sport into really successful positions in work by the application of what they've already got. Yeah. They just didn't know they had it.
Yeah. On the topic of positions in work, I've seen and had a few conversations with financial advisors recently who are starting to investigate the idea of having a non-exec director working with them. And we're not just talking about big firms where you might expect that to happen, but really small firms as well. Now, you know, this is something you obviously know a lot about. What fundamentally could be the benefits to a financial advice firm of having a non-exec director having a role in some shape or form?
If there's one recommendation I'd give firms, it is to have an independent non-exec director. And it's often because that either a smaller firm with a founder or a bigger firm with really successful people in that industry, sometimes you just might fall in love with your own ideas. Right? You just might. Why? Because maybe it's your passion, maybe it's you've thrown everything into it. And therefore what an independent director should be able to do is just be a serial asker. Why? What if? How? When? Right? And almost just sometimes either be an accelerator that says go for it, because the founder or the firm might be cautious, or actually they might act as a bit of a break that says, is it now? Is it timing? Where does the people fit in this? You want to grow. What's your recruitment strategy? What's your induction strategy? What's your succession plan? And there's a great book by Charles Handy called Gods of Management, where he talks about 4 organisational structures, 3 of which are not sustainable in the long term, and 1 is. And actually that's about having a vision and a cause, having a group of people that are committed to it, but actually having somebody that's not emotionally connected, that just asks all the questions. It may well be you'll implement that strategy and you'll be really successful, but I think it's right that somebody asks the questions that maybe others want to ask but don't feel comfortable in asking.
Yeah.
I think also independent non-exec directors can bring experiences from different industries. So one of the reasons I get asked to work in sport is because both my regulatory experience through banking and in some areas of sport, I've learned a lot about sports governance. Now there's a brand new code come in for sports governance to ensure that there's openness and transparency around appointments. There's equality in appointments. So on a publicly funded sports board, 30% of the board has to be female. And so understanding some of the broader aspects of other industries, I think, can be really valuable in the financial services industry.
Mm-hmm. And is it advisable to have somebody who has a broad business experience, or, for example, just focus on one aspect of the business? So, for example, I know a guy who does a lot of non-exec work, but he just helps with the digital side of businesses.
Yeah. Well, it depends what the client needs at a particular time. There'll be some clients where they need a generalist. So, on a board, we've just appointed a non-exec director, 1 of 3, and absolutely digital and digital streaming was what we were looking for, what we advertised for, what we recruited against, and that was because we, as a sport, needed that particular skill set as broadcasting and how consumers consume broadcasting changes. Gone are the days where you'll get a teenager sit down for 80 minutes and watch a rugby game, or 90 minutes and watch a football. They'll just pick up the phone at the end of it and go, I've just watched all the goals and all the highlights and it was brilliant. And they've consumed 4 minutes of coverage that might have cost hundreds of thousands to produce. So I think it's about what's the right person and the right skill set you're looking for as an organisation. And sometimes, if it's a startup, you'll need somebody who's done it as a startup and almost be able to navigate the minefield. Some startups have to mature, and often where I add value is I see a startup that is just brilliant, but has now got to start putting some systems and processes in place, because you're bringing different people in from outside who weren't there at the start. So often it's the process and the system that helps people stay within the framework. So I would be saying to people watching this, the owners or leaders of the firms, work out what skill set you need around your board table. It might be generalist, it might be a specialist, but having somebody that either has got expertise where you haven't, or in the case of a generalist, can ask you lots of questions and make lots of observations, I definitely believe you'll benefit.
Yeah. And so even with small businesses, perhaps 1-2 person businesses, yeah?
Well, it depends what they can afford, right? Because, a non-exec, typically, if they're going to give up the time and or expertise, will expect some remuneration. So what that might be, instead of a independent non-exec director, there's some really good business growth coaches out there. Some of the banks now realising that gone are the days where they just lend you money. I think some of the banks want to help your business grow. Yeah. So if you want a 2-man or woman band, to use that phrase, and you want to grow your business, you might not need a non-exec director yet, but actually there might be people out there that might want to mentor you.
Yeah.
And actually that's a good way for a prospective non-exec to learn the ropes and do their flying hours. Yeah. There's a great book by Matthew Syed that says, if you want to achieve mastery, it takes you 10,000 hours. So, some people who want to be a non-exec might have to volunteer and support other businesses to almost get the logbook and the passport ready, going, I've helped these businesses do this.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be paid. It's at what stage is your business evolution will dictate what types of support you need, I think.
And when somebody's looking for a non-exec director, are there specific characteristics that you should be looking for? Obviously, particular skill sets that you may feel are needed, but are you looking for people who you don't necessarily want to get a buddy-buddy relationship, but people who want to challenge you and question? Is there anything that particularly people should look out for?
I think one of the things you have to look for is impartiality. And you know, a lot of people want to get into sport, for example, because it's a sexy and cool thing to say, but in sport, to do the job properly means there'll be conflict at times, where you'll have to really explore that conflict. Where, as an independent non-exec director, you've got fiduciary responsibilities. So therefore, you can't just agree with the owner. You know, if you don't agree with them, just because they're the owner, don't agree with them. You have to sit there and say, I don't agree. These are the reasons why. By the way, I'd like it documented, just so we're very, very clear that you can take the decision as a business owner. But quite frankly, my fiduciary responsibility is to advise you that. So having that impartiality, having the ability to do the right thing, even in the face of an owner or a board saying, well, we're going to do it. Not just going, well, okay then. No. I still think it's the wrong thing. And I'd just like my views documented.
Yeah.
Now, that just make people take a step back that says, okay, you know, and you've got to come in with evidence. So I think you've got to show a level of commitment, because a non-exec director isn't about surviving the board meeting. It should be about really understanding what the business aims are, and maybe spending a bit of time outside of the traditional board meeting to understand some of the deeper aspects of the business. And therefore, you might understand and have a little bit more information that will enable you to make the right decision, right, versus a set of board papers that you read the day before, the week before, the night before.
Yeah. Chris, I really appreciate your time today.
No, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. One of the things we're doing is asking everybody we're talking to if they could set a bit of a challenge for the financial advisors watching this. And so what would your challenge be?
So whenever I present, Phil, my second to the last slide has the following numbers on them. It has 24, 7 and 31. So I'd like to set my challenge around the numbers of 24, 7 and 31 for the financial advisors watching. And it's this. The 24 stands for the next 24 hours. As an individual watching this podcast, what are you going to do in the next 24 hours to make you better at who you are and what you do? So, for example, you and I will have mentioned several books, some of your other guests. Why don't you get off your arse and order that book on Amazon in the next 24 hours? So that's a personal thing that you're 100% in control of. The 7 stands for 7 days. If you're part of a team, in the next 7 days, what can your team do to be better at who they are and what they do? And you know what? That might be go out and see some more clients, go for a personal best in terms of activity, servicing, follow some clients that you know you've not seen and you really need to get back in there. I don't know. But in the 7 days, that's the team thing. Then in the next 31 days, why don't you email your big boss with one idea that can make the firm better? Because ultimately, I think innovation and growth is based on idea creation. So if, you know, I've led teams of hundreds of people, and when I've asked that, I've got hundreds of emails. But within some of those emails, been some of the most amazing ideas. So to repeat the challenge, it's a personal thing in the next 24 hours. What can you personally do differently to make you better at who you are and what you do? In the next 7 days, as your team, what can you do to make your team performance better? And then in 31 days, I want you to email your big boss and say, I've got an idea that can make our business better. And businesses get better by, you know, marginal gains, as we know in sport. And everybody's got a part to play. Because I know lots of people who come up with ideas that don't know where to go in their organisation with the ideas. So that's my challenge, Phil.
Chris, that's absolutely fantastic. That's a great one. Thank you so much. And at the end of this video, people watching will be able to have the opportunity to join a private forum where they could take up Chris's challenge and the others as well, report back on how they're getting on, get accountability partners, and move forward. Chris, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
And can also wish you luck in your work in the Rugby League World Cup 2021. I expect you're very excited about that.
That's going to be the biggest Rugby League World Cup in history. It's great that we're hosting it in England. We've already announced some of the venues, and we'll be the first non-footballing sport ever to appear at the Emirates in London for the World Cup semi-final. We've got a fantastic array of World Cups. It's not just men's, it's a Women's World Cup, it's a Wheelchair World Cup. Wow. We've got double headers at Anfield where the opening women's game will be with the England quarter-final, and it's just going to be very special. One of our values is bold and brave, and we're looking to make it not just a rugby festival, but an experience that even people who've not seen or attended rugby league games before would want to come to and really, really enjoy what is a wonderful, athletic, physical, yet skillful sport.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Chris, Brindley, great to see you today, and thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Phil. Thank you.